on, YouTube. Well, in case the shirt wasn't an indicator, that's right, it's finally here. The long-anticipated trailer for James Gunn's Superman officially dropped this morning. And I have been asked by a numerous amount of people what I think of it. I have evaded questions on threads. I have kept my thoughts to myself as I have periodically watched this trailer throughout the day. And, well, I have thoughts. And to better express those thoughts, I took time while I was working, doing two jobs at once, essentially, to jot down my thoughts accordingly with each scene, with certain beats, etc., etc. And I thought the best way to express that would be in a video form. People may like what I have to say. People may not like what I have to say. But I would just like to preface up front, yes, I will be watching this movie. There are things in it that I do like, that I have seen that I like. There are things in it, especially in this trailer, I'm not a big fan of. And I say that as someone wearing the shirt, anticipating this movie because I like Superman as a character. I may not be 100% in James Gunn's corner, but I don't hate the guy either, like a certain cult out there. All that said, what I aim to do with this video, at the very least, is not only just express myself, but maybe not really pick it apart, but really just highlight things I liked and highlight things I wasn't really too fond of, but also just try and look at it from a way that's not so skewed in one direction or another. Trying to find the positives and possibly the negatives, but overall, just really, I just want to express myself and how I feel about this new Superman trailer and this movie that is coming on July 11th. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Now, opening up this trailer, there is a literal conversation. There's a shot of the Metropolis skyline, obviously, but then it cuts right into a conversation that Lois and Clark are having, I'm assuming in Clark's apartment, and she infers to him, "Oh, you're serious? You want me to interview you as Superman?" He says, "Sure." And this, in essence, confirms that Lois Lane knows that Clark Kent is, in fact, Superman. But what's also interesting is that as this interview progresses, it is very clear of which sides of the argument they both fall on. And I find it very interesting that the beats of this conversation more or less encapsulate certain things that Zack Snyder did when he was working on Superman, subsequently through Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman as well. The question of whether or not his motives and actions are warranted, the consequences on a global scale, and how they affect the people and world around him, whereas he is just a man just trying to do the right thing, and that's what he ultimately believes in, regardless of the consequences that may come with that. I find this very interesting, and it also just reaffirms something James Gunn said when he said he had been inspired by the likes of the animated series, Richard Donner, as well as things Zack did, and this conversation, and even more so some of the plot of the film as it would seem, is very indicative of that inspiration. And I'm sure, hardcore Zack Snyder fans are probably rolling over in their grave right now thinking about this. But I find that very interesting and flattering, where in Man of Steel, both of these characters were almost in a way aligned, even if that conversation surrounding what happened in Nairobi in BVS with Lois and Superman and how that conversation ultimately just led to a moment of intimacy. Here, I think this is actually the conversation that sparks the questioning of whether or not their relationship is going to last. And I think that's actually quite fascinating, where you have the very first interview between Lois Lane and Superman, and it's the thing that ultimately brings up the question of whether or not they can have a long-lasting relationship. So, that I do find pretty cool. Another interesting point of this conversation is Lois Lane mentions that the Secretary of Defense will be looking into the situation regarding Superman and whether or not he was in the right or wrong. And what's interesting here is there is a shot of Rick Flag. Now, is he the Secretary of Defense? Is the Secretary of Defense the same as the head of Argus? Because the Peacemaker trailer that came out earlier this week, or last week rather, indicates that he is the head of Argus. So are they two of the same kinds of, positions? Possibly? I don't know. Maybe Rick Flag's just operating on behalf of the Secretary of Defense, because as we also see in the trailer, we see Flag with the Engineer as well as Ultraman hauling Superman in with the army. So that's also very interesting. Also, Lois Lane makes mention of whether or not Superman consulted the president, and there's a shot of Lex Luthor, to which Superman sighs and says no. Are we getting President Lex Luthor? I don't think so, but maybe Luthor's in the bid for president in this movie, because as we can tell, he's clearly the head of, in this universe, Luthor Corps. So, I find it very interesting that the trailer is cutting away to where Lois Lane makes mention of talking to the president, consulting the president, and it has a shot of Lex Luthor. That is a very interesting point indeed, especially if Superman fans would be keen to remember the President Luthor story. So, I find that fascinating. Now, this conversation ultimately leads to Lois Lane wondering and asking him if he considered the consequences, to which Clark responds with, "People were going to die." I have to admit, this is actually very much a Superman thing to do. I will concede that 100%. Superman is all about saving lives and being the hero for people who cannot save themselves, and he's always willing to help people no matter what the situation is. And he even mentions earlier that he only acts on behalf of himself. He wasn't representing the United States, which is, I can understand the murkiness of that situation because he did originate from the United States. So is he an American hero or is he a world hero? I feel like something like that may be at play in this film as well. Time will tell if that actually does end up being the case. Following that, we get a sequence of Superman presumably falling from some kind of battle, landing in the middle of, I would assume, Metropolis, landing inside and making a bit of a crater, only to have someone help him up after yelling Superman, to which it cuts to a moment of Superman telling someone or something, "Hey buddy, eyes up here." I'm gonna be honest, this shot looks somewhat unfinished, if not just outright not good. I mean, the damaged suit I can kind of get behind, but I don't know. There's just something about this scene that feels kind of off. I also, weirdly enough, I don't think I'm a fan of like witty banter Superman during a fight. I don't know. Maybe it's the line delivery from Corn Sweat here. Maybe it's just the way it's presented. I'm not 100% sure what it is, but I wasn't really feeling this scene all too much. But I will say, it was nice watching someone actually pick up Superman and help him, and him being appreciative of that. That is something I don't think has been done before. I could be wrong. My memories of the first 4 Christopher Reeve films are a little shaky. Superman Returns is a movie that I try not to think about too much, and I think there were moments of this happening in Man of Steel, come to think of it. I mean, I don't understand, why we need to pit certain versions of this character against each other. I think they're all valid in one way or another, but I just think when it comes to this scene in particular, I liked the human helping Superman. I don't really like the flashiness and the choppiness of the after portion of it. The flying up, "Hey buddy, eyes up." Like, I don't know. Maybe I just don't like a witty Superman. Maybe that's the point I'm trying to get at. So after we get some shots of Lex Luthor and the Engineer breaking into the fortress, the Engineer tears apart some of the robots and also kind of dukes it out with Krypto a little bit while he holds down the fort. We also get some shots of Superman saving a woman from the kaiju, breaking out of that glass container he's in, as well as this giant energy being behind Superman and Lois in the midst of a dark backdrop. This is all intercut with your choices, your actions. That's what makes you who you are. And these are from the words of Jonathan Kent, Pa Kent. And I have to say that this is a really great piece of advice that Jonathan Kent could give Clark in a moment of doubt. This is something that I think is a double entendre in a way, because number one, this movie is being released on July 11th. That is the anniversary, the birthday of James Gunn's late father. And I feel like I have a suspiciously sneaking feeling that a lot of these interactions between Clark and Jonathan are going to be very reminiscent of possible conversations that James Gunn may have had with his own father, which would infer his own Superman in a sense. and the advice he was given to him. And I find that very endearing and nothing but respectable. I don't doubt one bit that a lot of Pa Kent was probably inspired by his late father. As someone who lost someone important to me and was very inspirational to me in a very similar manner, I can really identify with James Gunn in that respect, and I really do. This is arguably probably the stuff I'm looking forward to the most in this movie is the interactions between Jonathan Kent and Clark Kent. So I can't wait to see more of this. I hope there's a lot of it in the film, but we'll see what happens. But until then, this is probably the best part of the trailer for me, when we see little Clark get picked up by John and having this conversation between the two of them and getting more context of this nice shot of them sharing a moment. All right, moving on. Next up is, of course, the main antagonist of the film, Lex Luthor. We've got a heck of a performance here from Nicholas Hoult. First and foremost, it seems to me that Lex Luthor's interest in Superman in this film, just based on what the trailer is implicating, feels as if he's almost jealous of Superman's presence, as well as his actions that have taken kind of a center stage in regards to what he is probably ambitiously chasing, possibly a presidency. I'm not really sure. Maybe he's trying to get some weapon defense system to be more newsworthy. I'm not really sure. But it seems to me that James Gunn has honed in on the vanity of Lex Luthor and the sheer amount of jealousy that Luthor holds for Superman, especially in a lot of very prominent, popular iterations of, these two iconic arch rivals. If I had to guess, though, the reason that Lex Luthor is invading the Fortress of Solitude is to possibly steal some form of Kryptonian technology to retrofit for his own machinations, considering James Gunn has considered this version of Lex Luthor almost a sorcerer of science in a weird respect. Whether or not this actually ends up being the case remains to be seen. I feel like there are elements here of the Engineer's presence that could mirror that of Mercy Graves, but they're not one and the same, even though visually in some respects they can be possibly seen in the same, especially if you look at the animated series version of Mercy Graves opposite the Engineer. There are some similarities there. Also, when it comes to Lex Luthor, he has a very interesting quote here regarding Superman. It says, quote, "He's not a man, he's an it who's somehow become the focal point of the entire world's conversation. I will not accept that." In a weird way, to me, it feels like he's blended elements of Gene Hackman, Jesse Eisenberg, and Clancy Brown all into one, while that last bit of line delivery about "I will not accept that" feels a little flat and weak. I do believe that Nicholas Hoult has the potential to be one of the more memorable interpretations of one Lex Luthor. Okay, what is going on with Metamorpho in this movie? Because it looks like he's got kryptonite on his hand while the Luthor goons just beat the snot out of him. Like, there's also another person. There's two people. There's one to the right, one to the left, a lady in a pink dress, and then another person there, like like I'm not really sure. Maybe it's just the shadow of the soldier there. I don't know what's going on in this scene, but it's very interesting. Like, is Metamorpho like in cahoots with Luthor? I don't know, but I'm eager to find out because I love Metamorpho. Metamorpho is one of my favorite, like, underrated DC characters. So whatever they decide to do with him, I'm just happy at the fact Metamorpho is going to be in this movie. Okay, that is dope. That is dope as shit. I'll say that for sure. Okay, next up we have a shot, couple scenes, a little bit of footage of Martha and Jonathan confirming they're both alive in this movie, and I would imagine this is probably either before the second or third act, maybe. I'm not really sure where this takes place in the film, but Martha makes a comment of, "I cleaned your boots, I'll go get them for you." She goes off and gets them. You can also see Jonathan Kent there in the back. I gotta admit, I understand what's going on here. This is catering to Superman fans who like that dynamic of Superman having both of his parents alive and Martha being the one to tend to his suit, and I get that. I'm not really a fan of it, honestly. Like, the whole "cleaned your boots," it just screams like, "Thanks, Mom." Maybe that's a little corny. Maybe I think that's a little corny. I think this is probably going to land great with children and kids. Obviously, I would also posit that this is, I don't doubt one bit, like, this is easily going to be just ammo for the Zack Snyder cult, and they're going to make fun of it 10 ways to Sunday. And I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying, like, this doesn't really work for me personally, because I actually like the suit explanation in Man of Steel, where it's a Kryptonian uniform as opposed to something his mom made out of the cloth he came in, like, or whatever. I don't know. I just have my preference in terms of, the suit and who tends to it, who takes care of it, etc., etc. So, on one hand, I like that both the parents are alive. On the other hand, the whole tending to the suit thing, I'm like, I can live without that personally. Okay, this next thing this is probably like my least favorite thing in the entire trailer. I don't give a shit if Eve Tessmacher's taking a selfie during imminent destruction. That to me feels very Gen Z, very like something, people younger than 23 or 22 would do. Like, I've lived through a generation of people younger than me thinking it's funny to eat Tide Pods and post it on videos. I've seen people do dumb shit. I've seen people make memes about how funny it is that World War III could pop off at any moment, and this just feels like those similar kind of dumb shit kind of vibes. I get it. It's supposed to be humorous, and I'm sure people probably laughed at this. I looked at this and I went, there's no sane adult that would take a selfie in a moment where shit is literally going down behind them. I don't know. This little bit, I was just like, all right, whatever. Like, I'm not a fan. Not a fan. So there's about 30 seconds left of the trailer, and you see a couple montages of a couple different things. You see Guy Gardner, one Hawk Girl, and then, of course, you get other things. There's one thing in particular that caught my eye, and it's this one little bit of where Superman is chasing something in a very dark setting with a red laser shooting at him. I wonder if this is some kind of pocket dimension. Is he fighting Ultraman in this? Like, I'm not really sure what it is, but it looks cool nonetheless. Very interesting stuff. But overall, this trailer ends with a couple different fun moments, and then there's that one last bit after Superman. The one thing I really liked the way that the trailer ended was a silhouette of Superman flying into the camera, and then you get the logo. That's great. But the fact that the trailer ends on like, oh, you have a dog too, and it's played up for laughs. Obviously, Crypto is going to be the big, fun spot of this film. That's the interesting thing, I think, is Crypto's going to have a presence in this film and will likely be the big scene stealer. So overall, I think the trailer is well done. Savor a few sluggish CGI moments, some seemingly weaker flatline delivery. This trailer finally gives us an idea of the movie that we're expecting in July. And it takes a lot of cues from Richard Donner as well as Zack Snyder in certain respects. But there is also a lot of influences there from, All-Star Superman. I haven't read For All Seasons. I'm told I should, but I'd imagine it's there too. Of course, there's some animated references there as well, be it from Fleischer or even the Superman the Animated Series from the 90s. You watch my video, you know that there's more in it that I like that I did not. One thing I was not and still am not fond of is the fact that they are retrofitting the John Williams theme for this movie into something else, even though it still has a lot of inspiration from the Williams theme. And I think that's a bit detrimental, personally. I think Superman deserves his own theme. If you're going to make a new version of Superman, give him his own theme. My Adventures with Superman has his own theme. Henry Cavill has his own theme. Like, there are multiple versions of Superman that do not rely on use of the John Williams theme. The John Williams theme was used in the theatrical cut of Justice League. That didn't work. It was used again in Black Adam at the fairy tale end with that post-credit scene. Again, it did not work. So, you can change the sound of it. You can alter things, put it under a guitar, whatever. I just think that using this theme again almost takes you out of what we're being presented. Mind you, I'm one of the Superman fans who doesn't look at John Williams' Superman theme as the holy grail of Superman themes. There are a lot of Superman fans that hold that theme up on a pedestal, and that's fine. But again, I think that each version of Superman deserves to have its own identity, both in visual and orchestral. Like, you need a different version of the score to accommodate a different version of the character. Now, some questions I have. Are people hyped for this? Yes, I believe 1000% people are hyped for this trailer. Are people in the real world hyped for this trailer? I don't know. I didn't ask people at work. I let one guy know that it dropped, and he was like, all right, cool. Will this movie and this trailer be weaponized against what Zack Snyder did for Henry Cavill's rendition of Superman? Yes. Yes, I think it will. I 1000% think it will. But I also think that people are, more specifically, the cult, they're going to take this trailer and they're going to, beat it down and tear it down any way they can. And that's not cool either. Listen, it's okay to like different things. It's okay to not like different things either. It's okay to have a preference. It's not okay to be an asshole about it. That's for sure. But another question I think is very important to ask is, does this film have the chops to kickstart another DC universe, or are general audiences hesitant for another reboot? That's really tough to say. I feel like the marketing has been pretty spectacular for the most part, and this trailer, it's gotten a lot of praise day one. So we'll see what happens. I think doing a Superman movie in the middle of a DC universe is a great idea. I'm not so sure about having a bunch of different DC characters in it to help move things along, even though I'm a fan of Mr. Terrific, Metamorpho, and Hawkgirl. Guy Gardner, I can kind of take or leave, but that's a different conversation for another day. But still, I like that the universe is populated. I just don't know to what extent these characters will play in the plot, which I guess I'll have to wait for the movie to find out. Overall, I liked it. I liked the trailer. Do I love it? No. I've told people plenty of times, I got my ideal Superman with Man of Steel, and that's totally fine. But here I am wearing a Superman shirt, talking about this trailer, telling you guys what I'm looking forward to and what I don't really am keen about. I will also give props. Someone pointed this out to me. There was no, bubble fart humor in this, and I'm very, very... I'm hoping that this is the film where James Gunn reins that stuff back in and takes it seriously. And I'm hoping he does, outside of that Tessmacher selfie thing. That was... Anyway. Overall, I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to it. I will watch this movie July 11th. I'm not, over the moon sold yet. I don't know. I'm not sure that I ever will be, because, my standard is Man of Steel. Whether you agree with me on that or not, that's fine. I'm not trying to change anyone's mind. I'm just saying I like Superman. I like what I've been shown. I'm hesitant about a few things here and there. I don't really like the John Williams thing being retrofitted into something else, and it's not even really something else. You're literally just putting John Williams' theme under a different tune. It's fine. I don't really like it, and I know a lot of other people don't really like that idea either. But overall, I enjoyed it. It was fun. It's a good time. Hopefully everyone goes to see it, because then we can get a DC universe on film again, even throughout television, animation, whatever. Honestly, I just want to get to Batman Brave and the Bold. No, seriously. Yeah. I will be there July 11th watching this movie. If you like this video, do me a favor, hit that like and subscribe button. As I always like to say, much love, take care, stay safe. Peace.